started my business right before COVID hit. And so we were literally in the middle of it at the time. COVID was there. We transitioned to a new driver at that point, but we never stopped business. When I say we slowed down, it was maybe we had to wait a little bit longer to find the next load or just a patience thing in it. But within those first 6 months or 5 months in business, we still hit six figures.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth and Christ show where we inspire the masses to become financially free while building God's kingdom. Today on the show, we have Ms. Brittany Stuart. Ms. Brittany Stuart is a owner of a hotshot trucking company, which is doing six-figure annually in business, and she's also a coach who helps other truckers, start their hotshot business. So thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So my first question to ask, who is Ms. Brittany and how did you get into this hotshot business?
Yes. So I've always been into entrepreneurship, whether it was in college, as in just planning like events for my friends and parties. I did hair for just a little bit, shorter period of time while working. And then my last venture before this, I was a travel agent. So I would plan group trips. We would always take trips, me and my friends and family. So I'm like, let me see, how this works. So I became a travel agent. I did group trips, anniversaries, weddings, just any type of trip that involved multiple people. I was the go-to in that. And so in 2019, my husband wanted to start this kind of business. He knew somebody from back home that did it. And I had never seen a hotshot truck before, a dually truck, or paid attention to one in that sense. And so when I say it kind of fell into my lap, it did in that sense of he had an idea and I pretty much took it and ran with it at that point.
Yeah, that's really great. And I want to ask, what about your husband wanting to start that business that you kind of ran with it? Like, what did you see for him expressing that he wanted to start this business? Like, okay, this is something I can support. This is something I can do as well and also build income for our family.
For sure. So again, entrepreneurship, just starting ventures and seeing if it'll work or not. I was never afraid to. And so when he brought the idea to me, I'm like, okay. Backstory a little bit. My parents both were not truck drivers. My dad was a truck driver. My mom had a Class A CDL as well. And so I'm like, okay. And then I worked in transportation at that time too. So I'm like, this would be something, that I can get into and just see what comes of it. So when he said it, I'm like, okay, you know what? I believe this is something that you want to do. And then I kind of had the part where I took over and then made it mine.
That's good. And for those who are listening and watching who may not know what the hot shot truck looks like, could you describe what it looks like and what kind of trucks fit in those descriptions?
So what we do is we do dually trucks. So we either have Ram 3500s or above or Ford F350s or above. And then we run with 40-foot trailers. So in hotshot trucking, 40-foot flatbed trailers. So you can do car hauling, you can do enclosed car hauling, you can haul boats. We do a lot of machinery, pipe, farm equipment, steel, wide and oversized loads like generators, air conditioning units. Anything that'll fit on a flatbed and fits our requirements, we'll transport it.
That's well said. And it's kind of funny because while I'm like sitting down here thinking, I can count many times I see these trucks, carrying cars or equipment to the construction site, but I never really realized that it could actually be a business.
Exactly. You'll see it and you think, well, maybe that just belongs to whoever's transporting it.
Yeah.
Not knowing it's an actual third party that's doing it.
Wow, that's amazing. So what was the first year of business like for you? Like, what was the steps, for you to get this business jumping and get it and making profit?
Yeah, so the first year was rough. And I think that's the first year that I've talked to anybody in business. You think like, okay, I got these steps. This is what they told me to do. It's going to be easy. When I started Hotshot Trucking, there weren't many people out there like where you could find information on the internet like you can now. So we had to get an LLC. We had to get our operating authority. along with the other filings for it. Once we got equipment, put insurance on it, it was like, let's go. But still, you're like learning a business that you really have no, no knowledge of. So my first year was really like trial and error, learning as I go, making mistakes, spending so much money on maintenance, or having a driver that wasn't beneficial to the company, that was costing us more money than he was bringing in. Figuring out like where in the US worked for us to travel to. If we know if we went through mountains, we were using more gas and putting more maintenance on the trucks. We figured out if we went to Florida, we would get stuck and wouldn't be able to come out. Just that first year was literally like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And so it literally took me during that time to I stopped everything else. So I was no longer a travel agent. I was no longer doing anything but focusing on this one truck, one trailer to make it beneficial. And it was either that or I had to go back and get a job. And I wasn't interested in that. So it was the only
Wow.
option I had.
Well, that and I like the fact that you said that you had a lot of challenges going through, and I want to kind of go through the different challenges. You mentioned a lot of different challenges. One something that comes to mind right now is location.
Yeah.
So is there a specific location where hotshot business is booming compared to other places where it's like it can be a hit or miss?
Yeah. During the spring, summer, fall, not really. As we approach winter time, you got to think like we're an open trailer. So anywhere where it's snow, we could be in high demand and we could be in low demand too. So like our drivers really don't go over a 500-mile radius from where we are in the Dallas area. So we try to keep them within that just because we know that the market is good here for flatbeds and hot shots. And we know that we can control fuel prices and they're not going to get stuck in snow or some type of winter ice storm typically, rather than the north area, the Minnesota, the Wisconsin, where it's very, Michigan, where it gets very cold, and then we have them out there in those cold conditions trying to secure the equipment too. So it makes it tricky. You have to figure out your lane, figure out if you want to. There's some people who work in the Northeast and they find that works perfectly for them and they're comfortable with that. I know the people that work with us, they're more like, keep me closer to the South where the weather is not below zero and they can get it done.
Okay, so that makes sense. In terms of the truck, like any car, it has to be, I guess, the right fit for the type of weather.
Yes.
And I know you mentioned that, when you was getting started, you had some truck issues in terms of mechanics. So I want to ask, just like, buying a car, what are some things that people can pay attention to before buying a truck to say,
Yes.
okay, this is something I'm going to start my fleet with or not going to start my fleet with?
So I always suggest a used truck. So I've purchased 3 in my time doing this. And I've always bought used trucks, usually like a 2016 to a 2018. The dually trucks are usually one owner. So they're not like a car we go by where it could be
Yeah.
multiple owners or people are trading them in as frequently. It doesn't happen. So I look for a one owner truck, less than about 60,000 miles on it if possible. 4x4, make sure that it's diesel. There are a lot of people that will end up going out and buying these trucks and be like, it's gas. And it's like, you can't try to pull 30,000 pounds behind you in a gas vehicle. It's not going to work.
Hey family, I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. And if you are and you have yet to subscribe to us here on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. And also, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts and you have yet to leave us a 5-star review, please do so. Now back to the episode.
Ah, okay, I'm glad that you mentioned that because the diesel and gas because in this generation yes things technology is starting to pick up. Tesla's coming out with new trucks, electric things. So would you still recommend people to get a used car that use diesel instead of making the investment into an electrical option?
I would, just because in the market that we're in, we just don't know how they're really going to work out. And so I'm like, if it's not broke, then don't fix it at the moment. And so when it comes to the electrical vehicles, I think they'll be beneficial to us just as we move more towards, just a technology-based world. We've come so far within the years, But I wouldn't say go out and get you an electric truck just because again, I don't know. It's just it's a lot to bank on. It's a lot to bank on to make sure that anything goes wrong in our trucks as well. So you put something that's fully, doesn't need gas or doesn't need, the typical maintenance that it has, and you're
Yeah.
like, who knows what can happen to this. So I would wait till they do a lot more research and testing and let everybody else get the kinks out before we decide to move towards that.
No, that's very smart. And I know you mentioned that there's some challenges and some lessons that you learned during this first year. I want to kind of, if you can go more into detail, these specific challenges that you had to overcome in the first year.
Yeah, so I worked in transportation. I was never in management during that time. So managing people was huge for me because I'm like, oh, I need to make them, make sure that they're a good fit for our company and, trying to overcompensate a little bit, but not realizing it. I realized those first couple of months, like if you're going to cost me more money than you're making me, then this probably isn't it. So then I got to that's like a hire and fire. I can hire and fire you in the same day, same week, if it's not going to be beneficial to what we got going on. So managing
Wow.
people was huge. Learning all the components of equipment. And so the first couple months of being out there, like we went through trailer breaks, and just because we didn't know the right settings to put in the truck, my driver didn't know the right settings. And so as he's braking, it's literally just wearing down my trailer brakes every single time to the point we have none. And so learning that, learning again the terrain. So learning that you can't just send people wherever if they're not comfortable with it. So if they say, I don't want to go to Chicago because of traffic, and you like, oh, you going to Chicago, like that's a recipe for disaster. Because they got an attitude now, or they're upset, or like, I told her I didn't want to come up here. So just figuring out how to work with people, coming in with the motto and the structure that our drivers and people that work for us actually work with us. We're all a team effort in here. So it couldn't be like an employer-employee relationship, because if I don't have you as a driver, then my truck doesn't run and then I don't make money. If you don't have my truck, then you don't make money in a sense. So letting everybody know, hey, this is a partnership coming in. We got to work together no matter what. So if you think the smallest thing is wrong, you got to let me know. I got to let you know. Otherwise, again, it'll blow up to the point to where don't nobody know why they mad at who. And, it could have been a small fix, but not communicating in those small instances, or when something is beginning to bother you, that you can fix it from there.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because oftentimes when just talk about trucking in general, you often just think of just dealing from business to business. You just drop the load and you go on. But I guess I never really hear anybody really talk about the team development. Building that relationship from owner to employee or teammates, as you say, and. One thing I want to ask, you mentioned that, you had some issue with the brakes, with the loading thing, but what were some resources that, that you was able to tap into to know like, okay, I can get this to fix this or replace that, because you said that when you started, there was not that much courses or information out there. So what were some resources that you tap into?
So when we had the big trailer issue, it was then going back to the company that we purchased it from. And we're like, hey, this is the issue we had. They fixed it. And now it's like, give us the solution so that this never happens again. Teach us what these settings should look like as we're carrying more weight or less weight, so that we're not just wearing it down. And so from there, we were able to teach future drivers like, hey, if you have a load that's 8,000 pounds, this is what your settings need to be on. Or if you have a load that's 16,000 pounds, this is what your settings need to be on. But not knowing that from the beginning, and then hiring someone who had a Class A CDL but was used to driving a semi truck and not a hotshot truck, they didn't know either. And so, like I said, using those resources, at that point, again, it was the shop. So getting good with the mechanic and saying, hey, this is going on. What do you think we should do here? So after that, we had like a group message with the mechanic. And anytime there was a trailer issue, it's like, we're going to ask them, hey, it may be late. You might not be able to text us till morning, but we cannot afford any more costly, mishaps. So let us know there. And I always tell people, like, never be afraid to reach out or use your resources, because you can think like, oh, they're not going to answer me or they can tell me no. Yeah, they could, but they can also be the solution to your problem.
Yeah.
A simple, hey, can you help me? Or hey, this is my issue. Do you have any suggestions or, guidance along the way? You never know who's willing to help you and who's not.
Well, yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100% right. And I kind of want to go back to like the team developing. You said that you can hire and fire people in one day, or even a week, which is which is pretty impressive. That's the word I'll use, impressive.
It comes to the point to where we have, some of our truck and trailer setups could be 60, 70, $80,000. And so when you have that much equipment that you're giving somebody control over, on top of I have my name on the side of your, my
Yeah.
truck, on top of I'm covering you with insurance. So if you're not gonna go out here and really like be in it and communicate, like communication is big for me through like text. And I always tell them like, you don't have to call me because it's hard. I don't want you calling every time. But hey, a quick, hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm loaded. I'm taking off. This is my ETA. Like all of those things avoid us having to try to track you or find you on the tracking system. So when those like small communication pieces end up being wrong, I'm like, well, yeah, if you start off wrong, and now I know, like, if you start off wrong with me, if you say, hey, we have an initial conversation, I'm gonna send you over all my paperwork. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm waiting on it. Like, and then you just go ghost for days and like, hey, I'm back. Here we go. Like, you can take my truck and go ghost for days too. And then I don't know where it is. So
No, you're 100% right. Yeah, 100%. It kind of gives you a better perspective on why it's important to have such strict policies. So, because the amount of money, your reputation is on the line, and which kind of asks me like, what are three things you look for before hiring or committing to a partnership with a driver?
Someone who is not just looking to make a quick dollar, So like if you can usually tell if people have a drive to work or a passion for trucking. So I usually see that if there's anybody coming in like, hey, I'm just trying to make some quick money, like, yeah, this probably isn't the right team for you to be on. Making sure that their driving record is clean and literally sticking to that. It could be something to where maybe they've had an accident and maybe it was at fault, but it was 4 years ago and not
Yeah.
3 of our requirements, but it still was an accident, so just not trying to let up on any of those small things. And then the third thing would probably be with communication. And then it's just kind of like I've learned to adapt like a feeling. So I can almost talk to somebody and feel after probably at least 2 conversations if this is going to work for a little bit or long term, or if this is like, yeah, probably don't you probably won't fit well into the routine or structure or kind of system that we have going on here.
No, that makes sense. And you keep mentioning communication. I could just imagine. I mean, I guess before I ask that, before I make that conclusion, are your drivers, are they mostly males, females, or are they just a mixture of?
Most of them are males. We have some females. Usually it's like one female on the team that we'll have. But they're mostly males. They're mostly like middle-aged guys that have had their CDL for an extended period of time. New CDL drivers are hard to insure too because they're, the experience in it. So as much as, sometimes you want to give people a chance, it's like if my insurance rises to a higher premium, I don't know at those points if it's worth the risk or not.
So is it necessary to have a CDL license to be
Not
to be?
all hotshot setups, but for my truck and trailers, you have to have a Class A CDL.
Wow. Okay. So my question with the communication, because like this is something that is you're passionate about and you really aspire at some point. I want to ask, is it harder because you're a woman? You're dealing in a very male dominant industry. Do you find it that communication, because as a male dominant, is very difficult, or is it just people in general?
Both. In the beginning, it was kind of trying to figure out my way, like you said, into the male dominated industry. So now not only do you have like a woman that's over you trying to figure out where you are, what you're doing. Some people, I've had drivers that just don't respond well to that. My husband is my partner in the business, but he's not always available too. So figuring out like, okay, well, if I really need something, I really do got to talk to her. Or, she really is the go-to in communication. Once I realized like, no matter if we're male, female, whatever the case may be, like if it's mine, it's mine. And you have to come in respecting that, or then like, your place and it just isn't here. And then people in general just have a hard time, I think, of communicating a lot of times too. Like I go on the road sometimes, so I know you get into the pattern of like a go, go, go mode. So sometimes you forget, but it's still like you have to almost just press it into them so hard. Like I require pictures after everybody picks up a load. And so when you don't send me pictures, you usually get like you got a picture, you must not be loaded, hello, just to make sure that, so everybody pretty much gets into a routine. In the beginning, it's kind of hard because we have to get them adjusted to what we require. But for the most part, everybody does fine in communicating.
What's up, fam? If you would like to cop some fire Wealth in Christ merch, you can go to wealthinchristbrand.com. We have t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, all available on wealthinchristbrand.com. Thank you guys for your support.
And I want to ask, you mentioned that you started in 2019, and as we all know, in 2020, the pandemic came. So I want to ask, how did your business pivot in 2020 to continue to produce revenue and profit? And what were some challenges you faced that you had to overcome during that period?
Yeah, and that's my go-to. I tell people I started my business right before COVID hit. And so we were literally in the middle of it at the time. COVID was there. We transitioned to a new driver at that point, but we never stopped business. When I say we slowed down, it was maybe we had to wait a little bit longer to find the next load, or just a patience thing in it. But within those first 6 months or 5 months in business, we still hit six figures in the first one. And that was during the initial COVID. So during the shutdown, there were a lot of companies that didn't make it, but a lot of them that did, because you think about it, we still needed product. Product was scarce to get, a little bit of everything. But even though the world was shut down on our like consumer side, there's still buildings being put up. There were still structure and still pipes still needed to be moved. Things still moved at a steady pace. It wasn't like the 2 months prior to COVID, but it still continued throughout.
Wow, that's really great. And I want to ask, being that, you started a business, COVID happened, you hit six figures, I can just imagine that, your fate, and God had to continue to motivate you, from the different, starting with one driver, finding that driver, to all the different challenges of knowing how to set up the whole system. How did your fate, encourage you and inspire you to continue to go?
For sure. So God has always been the beginning, center, front of my life. And I know that I would never be as far as I am without him. And so between, praying and going into my just meditation modes and just circling in on what the end goal was, like, it was not easy. There were times where I would cry, just be frustrated, like break down, working out what I felt like that first year was 24/7. But I always knew, and I always say, like, God will never put more on me or anybody than they can handle. It's just overcoming those challenges. And I always feel like he puts us through those things to make sure that we know that we can get out of it. He knows we can, but it's in order for us to fight our way through and then realize, like, okay, you know what? That wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Or if I'll tell people now when they say, like, how's your business through gas prices? I'm like, I survived during COVID when everybody was like in a panic. I still was running a truck. So I can survive during COVID, like I literally can survive doing anything. And that wouldn't be without praying and just having faith that the storm that you're in right now is not going to be there forever.
That is really great. And you mentioned the storm, and in this current economy, a lot of people mention about recession, and you already went through a mini recession with COVID. And I can just imagine, what would you say to someone who may be a woman, who may be in this hotshot business, who may have some fear, some worries, whether the business can survive for who knows how long this recession can loom around, what would you say to that person?
I would say if it's something that you're passionate about and you really want to do, then do it. Like there's never going to be a right time to get into trucking because my right time may not be your right time. I could say, hey, this is a great time, but you could be having something else going on personally that you're like, yeah, not it. I always resorted back to like the real estate. Like there was a time where real estate crashed and everybody was like, oh, I can buy. And then it was like sell. Everything goes up and down. And so it's like, if you want to jump into it, I just strongly suggest to anybody. And that's after doing this and not having like mentorship or a community or just people like-minded around me, that's what you really need to make it. Like you can do it by yourself, but you're going to struggle. It's going to be harder than just surrounding yourself by people who are in it too. And in that way, I always feel like you can bounce ideas back. You can say, hey, I was going through this today. Someone to make it feel better. There were so many times that first year where I had family, I had friends, but they didn't understand when my trailer brakes weren't working. Or they didn't understand, I had 2 pop tires this week. They're like, okay, did you fix it? So surrounding yourself, like whether you're, especially as women, because we like and we need, I think anybody though, community in a sense. And so having people that can say like, okay, well, it's okay. Like you can overcome that, or that's not as big as what you think it is because here's the solution to it. That's a game changer. That's a game changer for success in any different industry. It's just having people in your corner, investing in yourself. So long we think, and I think we've come into like this social media era to where everybody's selling something and wants you to buy something. But a lot of times, if you really do your research, you'll figure out like who's really for you and can push you to that next step. So never be afraid to invest in yourself. Never be afraid to buy a couple classes or a couple courses to see if it's going to be beneficial to you or not.
That's some really good advice, and I hope those who are listening actually apply that. And I want to ask, because you're a 30-year business, and I want to ask, what are some 5 things you can say contribute to you having that success still and still growing, in your 30-year business?
I would say God first, for sure. Never giving up on myself. And then I love to write down my goals or my plans or whatever I want it to be. Like if I have a goal, a new goal for the month, like I'm writing it down and I'm looking at it every day. So it's either, sticky notes on my desk, in my office, the bathroom. I want to see it visually so that to me, like when you see it, it gives you a better look like, okay, I still got to get there. Everything is in our head, but you got to actually visualize it to see it come into play. Community is huge. And then just not listening to any like negativity coming in. A lot of times when we're in different industries or we're trying to start new ventures, we'll hear about the bad, like, oh, there's no money in that, or oh, you're gonna go through these struggles. People are gonna tell you their negatives before they tell you their positives. So they're quick to run off a whole bunch of negatives to you and one positive. Somebody can take that in and be like, okay, well, you know what? That's a bad idea. Just because it didn't work for them doesn't mean it won't work for you.
100%. And how did you go about building community from your first year?
Honestly, it didn't really start until 2020, probably this year, beginning of this year. Because again, after that first full year, 2 years in business, I'm like, yeah, I started to meet people. COVID so when I say COVID didn't affect my business wise, it affected my social community that I was able to build because we were all at home. And so there were no like networking events. There were no, people weren't going to lunch or saying, hey, let's meet here. And so this year I'm like, you know what? In order for me to continue to grow, I need to surround myself with people who are doing what I'm doing, or surrounding myself with people who are even doing better than where I'm going so that I can, aspire to get there and figure out how that works. And so just reaching out, like literally, I've met and have had some of my best drivers from social media. Just reaching out, answering a message like, hey, you hiring? I am, going through the process. Some of my teammates now have literally reached out to me from social media like, hey, I like what you're doing. I want to be a part of it. I see where you're going with it. I want to help you in any kind of way. And I can circle that back to God too. I'll sit there and be like, for a while this summer, I'm like, God, I need assistance. I need help. You know, this business is growing. It's too much for me and my husband. And literally, you know, he sent two amazing individuals my way. And then, you know, we've been growing and building since then. So without him, none of this is possible. Without speaking and saying what you want, none of it's possible either.
Yeah. And I want to ask, what are some systems that you have in place that you didn't have in the your first year of business, in terms of getting the bookings, in terms of looking for drivers, in terms of tracking the load, to receiving the payment, what are some systems that you have in place and you would recommend for someone starting that's important for them to, okay, you need to make sure you have this system, you need to have these websites, so you can be off and going.
Yeah, so I didn't have like a structured driver qualification file when I started. It would be like, fill out this application, go take a drug test, send me your driver license, let's go. So now I have a whole checklist of like, this what needs to be in this folder, even before we move to the next step. And before we even have an initial interview, like, I need these documents from you. I need you to fill out this. Even with systems, there was a lot of like with one truck, one trailer, I know where my trucks are.
Yeah.
There's no way you can't tell me. When we got to 3, I'm like, okay, this is a lot. Investing in TMS systems. So now we're keeping track of each load. So now we know that if someone calls me and says, hey, I have a load number, I can type it into my system and find it. Keeping all of your paperwork organized. I've been working on with companies now, just getting their back office organized. So all of the paperwork you got incoming, outgoing, fuel receipts, making sure all of that's filed away. At any time, any business can be audited. At any time, somebody can come in and say, show me this. And if you don't have it, it's like, okay, twiddling your thumbs, what do I do? But again, all of it's been from learning. So someone probably asked me for something at one point. I'm like, let me get back to you. Or, I know I got it, but where is it? So let me make sure that that's there. The load tracking system has been amazing. And with that, I can send my drivers their pay stubs every week. So it literally can calculate the percentages. It can calculate any deductions. It automatically emails them over a pay stub on Fridays. Just, you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself. Again, in order to not become overwhelmed or to just be like, this business is everywhere, I don't know anything, it's falling apart, which is easy to, it's easy to happen.
And yeah, you're 100% right. It's easy to definitely get overwhelmed. And you mentioned now you have 3 trucks in your fleet. And I want to ask, how did you go from one truck to now saying, or when did you decide, okay, I can now spread out? Because oftentimes, in this current age, a lot of times, we like to just get a bunch of trucks at the same time because, we try to make as much passive income, 6 figures, 7 figures. So when did you say, okay, now I mastered this one truck, like you said, you was able to understand this is where my truck is at all the time, but now you have 3 trucks and you put in the different system. But when were you able to take that step, that leap of faith to say, yes, it's time for me to get new trucks?
Yeah, so I ran all of 2020 with one truck. And so about 15 months. So from 2019 to 2020, I had just one. In January, once I had kind of got that one in, me and my husband got to talking. It was like, let's go buy another one. Bought another one. I had a bright idea of like, let's get 2 at the same time. So I bought 2 at the same time and not one. So then it was crazy because at that point we were going into a driver like shortage. So we were coming out of COVID, but it was still very hard to find a driver. So I now had 3 trucks with 3 truck notes, 3 trailer notes, just 3 of everything, trying to figure out like, how does this work? So 2021 was a big learning curve of growing my fleet. I had 3 mechanical issues at any given time. And so I spent so much in repairs and maintenance in 2021 that I'm like, this isn't going to work for me either. So we moved to a model of, we now lease on owner operators. So they come to us with their own truck, own trailer, and then our sign goes on their truck and they run under our company. So it's definitely more so a partnership because they're bringing their equipment, but they're covering maintenance and any costs that pertains to the equipment. And then we do all of their paperwork, get their loads, all of the back office side. So I went from 1 to 3, then we went to 9, then we're currently at 6. And so even from 9 to 6, it was learning that, yeah, I can take on your truck, but is your truck going to be a good fit? So when we were up to 9, we realized that brand new trucks didn't have good fuel mileage. And so rates were paying good, fuel was kind of increasing. No one was seeing their profit because they were spending so much in fuel. And those were 3 brand new 2022, 2021 trucks. So at that point, we had to start over again and say, hey, you know what, we'll take these on, but we have to make sure they stay in these parameters in order to make this beneficial for everybody.
Wow, wow, wow. Oh, wow, that I definitely want to break that down because you said a lot of things that kind of rang my mind. You know, one was with the what's it called? Dang, what's my chance to drivers? You know, not having enough drivers, and you know, in this current economy, a lot of people are always looking for higher paying job. You know, we're dealing with quiet quitting. So how do you go about dealing with that, especially now with your new model where you know you have drivers bring their trucks to you, and you guys just put in the final products to make them so you guys can both make money.
Yeah, and so a lot of bigger companies already do it, but it was just kind of figuring out our smaller scale. So we had tried like twice back in 2021, but couldn't get the percentages down, couldn't get the systems down. And then we were still learning during that time too. So I'm running 3 trucks. I'm trying to add on additional ones, but the math wasn't mathing. So everybody was like, nope, this won't work. And so after that, it was literally like every time I feel like I had a setback, it was go back to the drawing board and figure out how this will work. And so at that point, it was kind of being in communication with a few drivers, and they're saying like, hey, we do want to lease on. Okay, you know, and realizing, just being open, like, what do you need to take home in order for you to be happy at the end of the week?
Yeah.
So once they came back with those numbers, redid a few percentages and numbers, we were able to structure it to where it made sense for them to be able to join us. And then with them partnering with us, it's like, hey, I have this equipment. A lot of people don't want to run their own business. So they don't want to do all of the paperwork and back office and compliance, but they still want to run and make money. And so that's where we come in, kind of that middleman or that stepping stone. I always say, we don't want you to be here for too long. We want you to come in, learn, and make money at the same time. So you're able to learn the industry without the major responsibility of having your own business and running that, but you're still able to get that knowledge. You're still able to make your money, and then you're able to go and build your own, you know, once our partnership is complete.
Okay. So you basically, so the lease on is basically for a certain time period. And after the lease is on, you expect your trucks and your drivers, you know, to go on their own, to venture out and start their own business. That's pretty dope. And you know, you mentioned, you know, how you when you first got when you decided to get the 2 truck at the same time. And what came to mind is, you know, how did you go about financing your business? You know, I feel like that's something we didn't really get into, but if you can quickly get into it, how did you go about financing in terms of going from that 1 truck to 2 trucks, you know, from the loads, you know, and learn how to price the different loads, you know, to making sure it's profitable for you and also the driver. So how do you go about managing the finance when it comes to this business?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was all just based on what we had, personal credit. There was no huge capital set aside to start it. It was like, let's jump in here and do it. And so we purchased the first truck and trailer, just personal credit. 2020, I was also able to build our business credit up. And so in 2020, I also financed my personal vehicle, which is a Jeep in my business name. And then a blessing, we were able to sell our first truck to the business. And so that came out of the personal name at that point. When it came time to buy the next 2, one was personal again, and then one was business credit again. And so just learning that, I've never had any big like business funding or any loans or any, you know, anything of that sense. It was always like, okay, what am I, you know, kind of working with what I have, figuring out that business credit is very beneficial to startup businesses. People think that just because you're a brand new businesses, you can't build it or get it, but you can. It
Yeah.
can become very beneficial to you in that sense. And then loads, so loads will fluctuate with the economy and where that are. Like when we first started, it was $2 a mile. So anything at $2 per mile was great. So if it was 500 miles, and they were giving us $1,000, we like, yeah, this is, amazing. The economy goes up, COVID hits, economy goes up. Now it's like, okay, we need more money than that. So just as the market goes up and down, kind of knowing. So then I had to teach my trucks and my employees, partners to be like, okay, let's figure out our bottom dollar. So that means after all your expenses, after what you need to take home, we have a formula that breaks down what you need per mile. So you could need $2 a mile. The next guy could need $1.50. The other guy could need $2.50. So once you realize what your cost per mile is, you're able to say, okay, you know what, this may not be the best load to the natural eye that's looking at it, but I know that I can cover all of my expenses, still make a profit, and it'll make sense. So each one is always different. Each business, I always say, like, you can't model your business off of what you see somebody else, because you don't have the same expenses. The next one could have a paid off truck or trailer, or, they may not have the same expenses to have the same cost per mile to be looking at that same dollar that they're looking for.
No, you're 100% right. And, I want to definitely say, thank you for your time, Ms. Brittany, for, sharing your story, sharing your journey. I want to also ask, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years as an entrepreneur, as a person of faith? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
I love helping people. So I think that's why I've moved towards our lease on program too, because it does help those individuals trying to get into the industry. I also love the passion of teaching trucking. So I want to get into more of the education world and teaching and, bigger groups. I do classes right now, master classes and online, but going to more in-person teachings in that sense. Growing my fleet of our lease on program and just having those individuals continuously coming in and out. Probably will purchase some land here shortly. And, truck parking is huge. There's always a shortage on that. Just continuing to grow as a person, to grow as a businesswoman. Whatever opportunities are out there, like I always say, I'm never afraid to try it. Never be afraid, never afraid to reach out to somebody if there's something that I need or that I know a benefit or a partnership can come from. So just continuing to grow and evolve and just continuously making it better.
No, I look forward to going. And you mentioned, you do offer some coaching and some teaching. Could you go into details for those who may be interested in being part of your coaching program, how they can tap in?
Sure. So on all social media platforms, it's building with B Stewart. And so I do Hotshot Truck and master classes. That means if you have no clue what the industry is, or you've heard about it, or you want to learn more, you can come take a master class. We do dispatch trainings. I do one-on-ones. We do group coaching, anything. I consult new and existing businesses. So if you have an existing hotshot trucking company, like, hey, my numbers aren't adding up, I'm not seeing something, we got a few hiccups, we'll come in, we'll revamp it, give you the right tools you need to be successful, give you other avenues to make money. Anything that is in regard to improving your business or building it is what I'm here for.
No, thank you very much. And my last question, just to wrap it up, as you as an expert in the business, where do you see the future of trucking, the hotshot business going forward? Do you see it moving from drivers to selfless trucks? So where do you see like the vision of this going?
I think for me personally, like the selfless driver trucks will be more so of like enclosed, because someone can load that and then take it there. It'll still require manpower for someone to do what we do, because we use chain straps, binders, we secure it ourselves. And so I don't see us moving towards that anytime soon. And trucking is just, again, it's always needed, no matter what.
Yeah.
Our products has to get to us. Our products have to get to someone else. So I don't see trucking slowing down or becoming non-existent because we have all of these self-driving trucks. Like, no, we got a long time before that can even flow properly.
No, I definitely want to say thank you for your time. For those who are listening, I hope you guys don't see as another guest, another person that Waffle Cry Show telling their story. I hope this inspires you. I hope this encourages you. And if you're looking for a group of Christians who are working towards becoming financially free, look no further and join the Pray and Invest group. And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please don't forget to subscribe and follow us on the different platforms. And stay tuned for the next week's episode. And thank you again, Ms. Brittany Stuart.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it and I wish you the best.